Syracuse, WSGO Oswego, W249BC Mattydale, W261AC Oswego, WTKWHD2 Bridgeport, ESPN Radio. This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, highlighting all of Section 3, interviewing the greatest local coaches and athletes. Brought to you by SummitCars.com, broadcasting in the ESPN studios. Here's your host, Mike Bristol, and Eagle Newspapers' Phil Blackwell.
All right, here we are on it. Mike Bristol and the great Phil Blackwell. Philly B, what's going on, kid?
Well, I looked outside this morning and there was something odd. Sunshine. Actual sunshine. Hadn't seen it all week.
It's kind of nice,
Maybe
right, Phil?
it's an element, I don't know. It's quite a day in local sports, given that we have a mere combination confluence of a Bills playoff game, an SU Georgetown game. There's a lot going on. But just the mere fact of sunshine after a week we've had, maybe that's an element of a little. You take any small victory you can these days.
No question. Phil Blackwell, famous writer from the Eagle Newspapers. Blake Bristol in studio, eating a little bit and having some water and checking out his iPad. Let's get right to it.
Hi, Blake.
Blake's actually is focusing right now on doing some tech work. All right, let's go to our SummitCars.com spotlight interview with Syracuse ice hockey players Ethan Petty, Cameron Walsh will both be on the program. And going into this winter, the Syracuse Cougars ice hockey team was firmly established atop the local large school ranks, have won a state Division I championship in 2019, repeating as sectional champions a year ago. But the pandemic stopped everything, including a chance at a Cougar sectional three-peat, which has no doubt frustrated and disappointed all the players on that roster, including two of which, veteran players. We'll talk to Ethan Petty and Cameron Walsh, go through the Syracuse Cougars ice hockey team. Phil, tell us a little bit about the program.
Well, 2 years ago they won a state championship, and these two players were among the couple of players that are still left over from it. And they repeated the sectional champions a year later, which was pretty impressive given the graduation losses they took from 2019. I'll say this. I think it's about time in this program that we got the perspective of players of all sports about all that's gone on in the last 9 or 10 months, and maybe we should try and make a more concerted effort to get their perspective. So it's going to be refreshing to hear their take on what these last 10 months has done for them, and how they've tried to adjust and how they've tried to, keep it in perspective. I think it's going to be very refreshing to hear this on the program.
Well, after that, we've got our Aflac Spotlight interview with Section 3 bowling chairman Mike O'Connell. And there is really high school sports going on this winter. This week, a handful of the area's bowling teams and their first contests of the season able to compete, which is nice because they agreed to a unique format that allowed bowlers to have a full league matches without requiring large groups to gather in close proximity. Basically a no-no these days, as we've been told here. This is a tribute to all the hard work of so many in charge of the area bowling, including Section 3 bowling chairman Mike O'Connell. We'll talk to him about that, how they set it up, why they decided to set it up, and it's nice that they have a safe format like that, Phil.
Well, it's refreshing that they were able to do that. And it was not probably easy to do. Bowling centers, if you recall, weren't really open, I think, till late in the summer or in the fall. They were one of the last places to open of businesses when things were slowly getting reopened in the course of the spring and summer. But once they were, obviously it's a low-risk sport, and they're able to have contests, although it can be a little tricky. I think we heard about a match between ESM and Baldwinsville the other day, where Baldwinsville bowled on Tuesday, ESM bowled on Wednesday, and no one knew who won until Thursday. But I think for all involved, the notion of having competition, just having it, is good enough this season when there was a threat that they wouldn't even have it at all.
No, you're right. We're going to finish things up here on the program with Mike Babinese from the CBA Alumni Association, talk a little bit about the work that they do and all the fundraising work here for CBA. So we'll catch up with Mike in a little bit as well. It'll be a great program. Phil, let's get right into the top 10, and you can check out Phil Blackwell's top 10 at InsideHighSchoolSports.com. Phil does an incredible job, always producing the weekly awards, the top 10, the weekly guest, as well as for the Syracuse Legend Show. And the New York Yankees show, which we'll be kicking that off again here in the spring. So let's get right to it, Phil. Let's talk a little bit about your top 10. You talked about the first full week of the 2021 and how the fact that it brought no change in the status for high-risk winter sports such as basketball, hockey, wrestling, and volleyball. Even though similar sports got go-ahead in most of New York's neighboring states, plenty of resentment here is built up across the state against these restrictions, with players, coaches, parents taking aim, everyone from Governor Andrew Cuomo to various school superintendents to their cautious approaches. However, the fact remains that many schools across the state, including the Syracuse City School District, are still doing exactly this, all remote learning due to COVID-19. There's some that are still in person, but that kind of remains the same thing. So let's get right to it. We have had one hint of optimism, and if you look at, and that could arise from this weekend's Buffalo Bills playoff game against the Indianapolis Colts. New York State allowed 6,800 fans into the Bill Stadium. Phil, let's talk a little bit about that. Good sign.
Well, I mean, and they were able to successfully test on a drive-through basis every one of the 6,800 fans that were going to be coming in. They caught like maybe about 50 to 100 positives, whatever it was. But the fact is they were able to test everyone, and the hope is that after the game they will contact trace with everyone. That could serve as a model for just large-scale events in general in the weeks and months down the road, because obviously you don't want to, I mean, from the sake of a business standpoint, it's going to be very difficult to just wait till everything's perfect and everyone's vaccinated before you open everything up again. It's going to be more gradual than that.
Well, you're right.
If you could put together a playoff game outdoors, why couldn't you play a high school football game in March when you've got 500 to 1,000 people and the schools have been testing all along? You know, testing kids, keeping kids safe, whether they've been remote learning or not. You can do all those things. If they can pull off a playoff game, they can certainly pull off a high school football game, I think, in March or April.
All right, let's get right to it. Our number 3 of Phil's top 10. Phil, talk a little bit about winter season got underway with bowling, as we talked about here in the monologue. Teams such as Cortland, Homer, East Syracuse, Manoa, Liverpool, and Baldwinsville competed through the remote format, which was suggested before the season began. 2 teams would compete at the same time, but at their own home lanes. The 2 scores would get compiled and compared for points purposes. Whether all these schools can get in a full league schedule, you know, that's going to hinge, obviously, depending on everything else, whether the schools stay open, even on the hybrid basis, something that's not uniformly the case across Central New York and might not be that way for the rest of the school calendar. So at least they're underway. At least they've got something going on. At least the kids are able to compete. So it's in my book, that's a positive.
One of the things about it is interesting about the remote formats is that it depends on honor system to a way. You got to make sure that you're honest about the scores you got. That's what one of the people, CNS bowling coach Tom Feeney was talking about, was the fact that is everyone going to be honest with everybody? And I think they hope everyone will be honest. But I would think that just having competition, you hope that would be the case. As an example, I mean, sometimes we completed matches one opponent. I mean, some of the difficulties is that maybe they're able to complete, but the other team can't. That's another possibility that could happen. Or as we said with the B of LASM match, they might not compete at the same time, maybe because of the availability of lanes. Remember, you have a couple of large facilities like Strike and Spare, Flamingo, but most of these teams compete at much smaller houses. Beagle Sports Bowl, for example, or Manoa, or some of the like Green Lakes where FM is. So it's a little more difficult to get onto those lanes on a regular basis. So many challenges, but I think everyone will tell you, we'll take all the challenges to have a season.
No, I know. Well, let's talk about your number 4 here. Obviously, high school basketball players remain on the sidelines. Several Central New York alums are competing in the college ranks. This includes, of course, Buddy Boeheim, who went to JD and led the Red Rams to section titles in 2018, the Class A Final Four appearance. As a starter for SU, Boeheim's value was reflected that the Orange's lone early season defeat to nationally ranked Rutgers came when Boeheim was out due to COVID-19 protocols. Though he himself never got sick. Once returned, the Orange won 3 in a row before another pandemic-enforced break that concluded Wednesday against Pittsburgh when Boeheim got 8 points to SU's loss to the Panthers. We all remember Frankie Pacell. Let's talk about this. Dazzling fans at New Hartford, transferred to Long Island Lutheran late in his high school days and heavily recruited, ended up at Dayton. After 1 year there, he transferred to Stony Brook, where he sat out last season, but he's finally taken the court on a regular basis this winter. So at this point, the Seawolves started 4-0 in East America Conference play. In its first 10 games, he's averaged more than 12 points, second on the team, plus nearly 5 rebounds per game, while connecting on better than 40% of his three-point attempts. Let's talk about him a little bit, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, Frankie Pacell, if you remember, was probably one of the best players ever to come out of New Hartford.
Yep.
And he left early there to get noticed at Long Island Lutheran, which is not surprising. Long Island Lutheran is one of the most decorated programs in New York State. It's just so ironic that after starting out at Dayton, which is a program that had a fantastic season last year, by the way, almost was really had national championship aspirations before the NCAA tournament got canceled. Now he goes to Stony Brook, and all of a sudden he's what everybody thought. It's like he's had his best success on Long Island. Stony Brook, of course, is on Long Island, averaging better than 12 points a game, helping America get to the top of the American East Conference, and more importantly, they've been able to play 10 or 11 games, which is not what a lot of programs have been able to do, even at the Division I level. So it'll be interesting to see how Paul Selly can hopefully play this full season and maybe push them towards an NCAA tournament appearance, which you remember, all the NCAAs are going to be played in Indiana this year come March.
I know. All right, let's keep it rolling. Let's talk about Tyler Bertram, Cooperstown High School. He was co-state player of the year in 2017. He led the Hawkeyes to back-to-back Section Class C titles in 2016 and 17. After going to prep school, Bertram first went to UNC Charlotte. He played in 12 or so games as a freshman. After the season, decided to transfer much closer to home, namely to Binghamton University. And here, Bertram has made a far greater impact with the Bearcats, starting 4 of the team's first 9 games, averaging nearly 10 points per game to stand second on the team, hitting 42% of his threes, and has brought a spark to long-struggling Binghamton program that, like Stony Brook, is in the America East Conference. So it's great to have him home, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Binghamton program has an immediate benefit. I think Tyler, like a lot of college players, has benefited from the NCAA not being as strict in terms of transfers, in terms of having transfers being able to play right away somewhere else. Remember, for the longest time, transfers, if they win, would have to sit out a year before playing again.
Yep.
But obviously, all the rules of COVID and all the ideas, over time, and they were loosening up transfer rules a little bit even before that. You could sit out semesters and play. But now, obviously, what's going on with COVID, I mean, people may have lost their whole season or might not be able to play this season. Given all that, the transfers have been able to play much quicker than before, and Bertram has taken full advantage of this for a Binghamton program that really needs it.
Well, it's nice seeing these Section 3 athletes and go on to do good things. And you get into a program, sometimes you got to transfer out, you get to another program, and you can start seeing some results, and that's what we're seeing here. We've also seen 2 former Section 3 greats at Bryant University who nearly upset SU in Orange's late November season open. It wasn't a fluke. Look at the Bulldogs. They've gone 7-1. Since, and Charles Pride, the former CBA and Liverpool standout, who is a sophomore starter, has averaged 14 points per game, one of 4 players averaging double figures for a team contending atop the Northeast Conference. Lucas Sutherland as well, who was West Genesee Wildcats. He was with that program 2019 for the state Class AA title, a year after Liverpool did so. Also getting some playing time in around 6 minutes per game, averaging at least a basket here or so right away as a sophomore. So both players having an impact on this organization, this program, and look for bigger things from these guys in the next couple years here.
With Pride, I mean, we saw what he did at Liverpool. I mean, first at CBA, and then at Liverpool, he was a sort of person who thrived in big moments and thrived against tough opponents. Remember, in that state championship season, if I remember correctly, he was also a great teammate at the time because he missed several games due to an injury. And how good was Ryan Blackwell's team? They never lost a game that season. And they did, even though Pride was out for a time. But when he returned, he was probably the difference maker that got them to a state championship because he was the one player who could take over a game with his scoring ability, with his aggression, with his energy. That's what I remember so much about Pride. And Sullivan was the type of guy who was just so dependable, versatile. He could, work inside, take the outside three-point shot as well. And I think both these guys, and it's neat to have them both on the same team over at Bryant, a place where they could both thrive. And a program, at larger programs, they might have gotten lost in the shuffle, but not there.
You're right. All right, top 8, Phil's top 10 here. Let's talk about Lucas Sutherland's West Genesee teammate, which we just talked about in the state Class AA championship team, Will Amika, who also went to Division I ranks, finding himself at the University at Albany, yet another Section 3 player in the American East Conference. Amika, though, has not played this winter, which might prove, a blessing since the Great Danes, like so many other college basketball teams, have gone through numerous pandemic disruptions, only playing 5 games so far and going 1-4. So, but at least they're playing, unlike JD alumni Jimmy Boeheim, who was at Cornell for his senior season, only to have the Ivy League cancel its entire season, the only NCAA Division I conference to do so. Unbelievable.
Yeah. The thing with Mika is, like I said, maybe it's good that he's 15 this season, because I think that, he'll probably have to be raring to go next season when everyone knows we're going to have full seasons with full crowds and have a lot more impact. I mean, Amika, as much as Sutherland was a star on that state championship team, Amika was the guy who could come up with big baskets at big moments. It was his basket in the regional game that got him to overtime. I think he was the most outstanding player of the state Final Four for good reason, because he was in the leading scorer. And last season, he was just as good for a Wildcats team that has the same ambitions, but were upset in the sectional playoffs. It wasn't because of Amika. He was a consistent force that everyone had to worry about. Quick moves to the basket and the ability and good free throw shooter. And I'm sure that he'll become an impact player at Albany. I'm very sure of that.
All right. Number 9, it wasn't just men's basketball players from Central New York sidelines by the Ivy League's cancellation this winter. It happened to a pair of women's basketball standouts, too. Starting at Pennsylvania, where Meg Hare, a member of 3 state Class A championship teams at JD, was set for her junior season after she appeared in 13 games as a sophomore for the Quakers. Also, Casanova High School's all-time leading scorer, Lindsey Lawson, who was a standout in both basketball and volleyball for the Lakers, was set to take the court for the Harvard Crimson this winter, only to get sidetracked as well, though it's likely that she'll still have 4 full years of college eligibility if she wants it, and both these programs will get underway here, hopefully relatively soon.
I would hope that. I mean, the Ivy League is obviously different than a lot of other athletic conferences. They're much more academic-based, and they might not be as... But I would hope that anyone who didn't have a season this year would get their full eligibility for the following year, the way they did for spring sports. Remember, they did this for lacrosse, they did this for baseball, they did this for in the NCAA for spring sports. That anyone who lost their seasons would get another year of eligibility. I would hope that would be the case for the Ivy League schools, who also didn't play in the fall either, if you remember. It didn't have a football season there either. So I would hope that Meg Hare, Lindsey Lawson can get the full college experience. But at these schools, they're going to get great educations regardless. We know that.
No question. The final number 10 of Phil's top 10 at InsideHighSchoolSports.com. We do have a Central New York presence in the NFL, baby. Playoffs this weekend. Beyond all the Bills fans out there, Latavius Murray, who started at Onondaga High School and frequently makes his way back home whenever he gets a chance, has built a solid NFL career and is now New Orleans Saints, part of a 12-4 Saints team that won the NFC South again and faces Chicago in Sunday's wildcard round. Murray has rushed for 656 yards and scored 4 TDs, also catching 23 passes. His role might be greater in the opening round if Alvin Kamara is not available. But either way, he'll be a key to the Saints' ultimate Super Bowl aspirations. Great to have a local talent doing his thing in the NFL.
Murray almost got to the Super Bowl with the Minnesota Vikings when he played. He's been on 3 different teams. He started with the Raiders early on. Then he went to the Vikings, where in 2017 his Vikings team got to the NFC Championship game before the Eagles, on their way to the title, stopped them. Going to the Saints, one thing we know about the Saints is that they're a team that have been able to win a lot of games even when people are out. They won games when Drew Brees was out each of the last 2 seasons. They've won games this year when Michael Thomas was out or Alvin Kamara was out. Murray, when Kamara might or might not play tomorrow, but no matter what, Murray's going to be important. As you can see, his numbers show the Saints really like to spread it around to a lot of different players, and Murray is just this dependable veteran. And I've always liked the fact that year after year he's come home to Onondaga High School, come back to his alma mater, give him back to it. He's a fantastic professional and someone that we can all be proud of.
All right, the great Phil Blackwell in the top 10. Thanks so much, Phil. We'll talk to you next week here on the program, and great job always producing all the top 10 info, all the guest info, and everything. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, Phil Blackwell, ladies and gentlemen, on the program. We'll be right back. ESPN Radio 97.7 and 100.1.
This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, brought to you by SummitCars.com.
All right, here we are back on it, and Phil doing an incredible job with his weekly lineups and guests, so we appreciate all that he does. Let's get right to it, because we've got some great guests on the program. We've got our SummitCars.com spotlight interview with Syracuse ice hockey players Ethan Petty and Cameron Walsh. Ethan, what's up, pal? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Cameron, what's up, kid?
Not much. You?
I'm doing well. I appreciate that. I got my son in studio, Blake Bristol. He'll school you, too, in his hockey skills. Did you guys hear me?
Yeah.
You're supposed to say, no, he won't, man. We're going to take him out. Let's go. All right, let's get right to it. From each of you, let's talk about, did you imagine when all this started 10 months ago that you'd still be sidelined? Cameron, what are your thoughts there? Do you think you'd still be sidelined like this? That's where you say no, Mike, or you can say yes. Either way you want to go.
No, not really.
Ethan, how about you, pal? What did you think?
Yeah, I thought we'd probably be playing by now, honestly.
How has, obviously you guys missed the sport, but is it as much the camaraderie and hanging out with the teammates, the practices, and then obviously the games and stuff are a lot of fun, but, Ethan, how would you describe that? What do you miss the most?
Probably just hanging out with the boys, honestly. It's just like a bond that you just got to have.
Cameron, how about you? What do you miss the most?
Yeah, just hanging out with all the guys and just practicing, putting in work. Like, playing games are fun, but it's like the hard work that's like what gets you places.
Yeah, and I always love the practices too, like being able to practice and that camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. I mean, the games were a blast with all the fans and stuff, but it's definitely that hard work and seeing the progress as a team. Ethan, let's go back to the 2018-19 season. At one point that season, did you really sense that you just had a sectional title, but a state title was possible? When did you really see that?
It was like known probably from the get-go. Like, we had a talented team then. And once we just started putting all the pieces together and started getting the job done and winning games, I knew it was probably possible.
Yeah. Cameron, did you feel like that from the get-go, or was it something for you that like a specific game or something took place that you said, yeah, this is a championship team?
Oh, no, I think it was definitely from the get-go. We just had that mindset that we wanted to win it all that year.
Yeah. What other memory, Cameron, of that season really sticks out for you for that 2019 state championship?
Probably our sectional game.
Tell me a little bit about it. Go through it for me for a minute.
It was just an intense game all around. I mean, I was the sophomore that year. That was when we went into 4 overtimes.
Wow.
And I didn't get that much playing time, but the playing time that I did get, you just put it all out there as much as you can just to try and win it all.
No question about it. Ethan, how about you? What, a memory that stuck out, or a specific game or a practice, or even something the coach said? Anything in particular that really stuck out for that season?
I'd probably also go with the West Jenny sectional game on that.
Besides,
it was just...
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It was just like an intense environment, and it was just really fun to be there, just in general.
I'm going to ask both you guys this, but how satisfying was it to repeat as sectional champions last winter when you knew everyone was going to target you guys? It has to be, as a competitor, you got to love that, Cameron.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You love being at the top, and people are going to come for you, but I feel like that just motivates you more to just beat them and continue to be the best.
Yeah. Ethan, how about you? You got to love that.
Yeah, it is nice, especially against our rival, to beat them twice in the sectional final. And having the target on the back definitely pushes us a little bit more.
And let's piggyback on that for a second, Ethan. You talk about, of the rivalries, is the one with West Jenny made more heated by their history and the fact that so many of you go to neighboring schools?
Yeah, it's definitely an intense rivalry between us, and it's always fun to play against them. Just because, the environment and, the crowds really get into it, and it just brings, everything up.
Name your top rivalries or those teams you can't wait to beat.
Jenny's definitely up there. Another one that I would like to beat is probably Beeville. They usually have a strong team, and it usually just brings in a nice game. And usually FM's usually a good game, too.
Yeah, yep. Ethan, how many players on this team stayed in touch, especially since the players on the roster are from several different schools?
Honestly, a decent amount have. Because even though we're from separate schools, we still talk a lot. We build friendships on the team while we're on the ice. And we just still keep in touch and check in on everyone once in a while.
Cameron, how about you? Who do you still keep in touch with? Did you have anybody that you're closer to from another school?
Oh, I keep in touch with, a lot of them. You just stay in touch, try and find ice as much as we can to try and get together and just hang out.
What are your guys' thoughts? And obviously this is for both you guys, and obviously wanting to play, wanting to compete, and the state has exercised, a lot of caution to the sport, especially to hockey, especially to basketball, football. What are your guys' thoughts? Cameron, what are your thoughts about of that, and do you guys feel like you could do it safely?
I feel like the sport itself doesn't have it's not like the sport itself that we're all worried about. I feel like it's more of like the locker rooms or the transportation that we're worried about.
Yeah.
But
yeah, Ethan, how about you?
Yeah, it's definitely hard to like not get out there with all these like concerns and like health risks. But
Do both you guys fear? Or both you guys have some hesitation or some fear due to this and what's going on, and how your parents feel?
They've been pretty safe about it and pretty fine about it. I've actually been practicing a little bit for my club team too.
Oh, that's good. So you've been able to get on the ice and move around a little bit. That's great. That's good. If you guys look at everything that's taken place, let's talk about some silver linings that could be pulled from this winter aside from putting sports in perspective. What's the positive that's come out of this for both you guys? And Cameron, if you want to go first, what's some sort of silver linings for positive that came out of this for you?
Some positive that came out of this would probably be like, don't take everything for granted pretty much, because like you have hockey at one point and then it's gone and then you realize how much you miss it and like how much it like impacts your life.
Great answer. Ethan, how about you?
Positive would probably be that I've actually probably gotten closer with my family and stuff, and I've just been spending a lot more time at home, so I've been able to like develop my off ice game too.
All right, attaboy. Nice, some home cooked meals, some family time. Isn't that nice?
Yeah.
All right, boys. Well, thanks both you guys for coming on the program. Ethan Petty, Cameron Walsh, or SummitCars.com spotlight interview. Best of luck to both you guys. Thanks for putting things in perspective and great answers. Both you guys are mature young men, and we appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
All right, take care now. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. ESPN Radio 97.7, 100.1.
This is the Aflac Insurance Inside High School Sports Show, brought to you by SummitCars.com.
All right, here we are, and we've got Mike O'Connell on, Section 3 bowling chairman. Mike, what's going on? How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. It's good to have you on the program. I'm glad Phil lined this up. So you look at high school sports going on, at least you got a handful of the area's bowling teams that have had their first contest of the season, able to compete here a little bit. You being the bowling chairman, let's talk about all that's going on the last 10 months. How happy were you to finally see teams having actual matches this week?
Thrilled and relieved that we were able to give our athletes a chance to compete. Obviously this has been a year unlike any other. A lot of kids out there in various sports have, had their seasons taken away from them. And obviously I'm just thrilled that we're able to give our kids a chance to compete.
When, I guess, during the summer or fall, did conversations begin about how to put a season together?
It was really in the late fall. We started talking about it. It was really, we held off as long as possible to sort of see what the situation was going to look like. Obviously the COVID situation was very fluid. Cases surged a little bit. So we held off as long as we could before we made a decision as to what it would ultimately look like. But it was really the late fall that when discussions really began to take place.
Ultimately, let's talk about who suggested the virtual match format, and is that also being used in other sections of the state?
There's discussions. First of all, the discussion about virtual competition really stemmed from a state meeting that we held. I think it was in late November, early November, late November. I can't quite remember now. But it was made at the suggestion because swimming did something similar where they held virtual meets. And it was to go, hey, can bowling do something similar? And so, we took it away from that meeting and reached out to, USBC. We just sent them an email and said, hey, how can we do this? And stay within the confines of USBC rules. Under normal circumstances, anybody who's a bowler, the idea of having two teams compete against each other in different bowling centers is just a terrible, terrible idea.
Right.
It's awful. And I would tell you that, if this were 2019 or any other year, I would tell you that is a terrible idea. But in the absence of, if the alternative is to not have a season, I'm gonna take the virtual idea and give our kids a chance to compete. So it was really in that conversation we got a little bit of guidance from USBC on how to word it in league rules, and we put it in the return to interscholastic athletics document that we host on the NISA website.
Well, you think too, I mean, doesn't that really, the virtual format, maximize participation since, an entire team of bowlers can roll 3 games at the respective houses? Yeah,
it maximizes participation, and it also removes a lot of the perceived risk. It's not just the risk in the bowling center. We also have to get our athletes to these bowling centers. So there's the putting kids on a bus. So you have a boys team, you have a girls team. A lot of times there's 10 or 12 kids that may be on each of these teams. They travel together, so you're going to have sometimes 20 kids, perhaps. Anywhere between, we'll say, 15, 16, 20 kids that you're going to put on a bus along with a couple of coaches. So, 66-passenger bus, social distancing can get a little bit hairy. So there's that concern that folks have. We just wanted to remove any risk or perceived risk, anything that anybody could point to say, hey, that's not safe, that's a potential where somebody could potentially catch COVID, so that our athletes would have a chance to have a season.
I'm talking to Michael Connell, bowling chair. Let's get some logistics here, or the details of bowling. I guess besides the variety of bowling centers out there, how many different types of lane conditions would a high school bowler typically face?
Generally, he or she is just gonna face garden variety, in the regular season anyway, just a garden variety house condition. But within that family of house conditions, there's really an infinite number of combinations that he or she might face. So, if you go to any bowling center here within the greater Syracuse area, the house condition at, say, Strike and Spare is different from the house condition at Flamingo, and there's different scoring paces that are present in each center. So, the scoring pace at one center might be significantly higher than a scoring pace at another. So, if one team is going to bowl all of their matches, for example, at a center that has a significantly higher scoring pace, and another team is going to bowl all of their matches at a center that has a significantly lower scoring pace, now you're going to compare scores. It raises the question, is that really fair? Well, no, it's not. But again, if the alternative is to just not have a season, then there's your choice. And I think most people, given today's circumstances, would choose to have that season. I like to use the analogy. Imagine if you have two golfers competing hole by hole. One of them is on one course and one of them is on another. And one hole is very challenging with a lot of curves, and another one is just a straight shot. So it's clearly not a fair challenge, right? But the mentality is we just wanted to give our kids a chance to compete in this challenge, because it's no secret. Look around; things are being canceled all the time.
I know. Well, talk about. I guess even though there will be a state tournament in 2022 at Strike and Spare, it's got to be frustrating to not have 1-2 straight years.
It was very frustrating. I mean, the tournament for last year was canceled the day before. I had all of the supplies, and people were actually en route to the state championship in 2020 while it was being canceled. We had kids and coaches and everybody on buses halfway to Syracuse from Long Island. They had to turn around.
Wow.
This year, obviously, it's canceled months in advance.
Right.
There's some questions about whether or not it was done too early, but I fully support that decision. people need to plan. They need to book hotels, and obviously to make all those plans and then only have to turn around and cancel them later on is very very challenging. And so I think that given the situation that we're in now, the likelihood that our situation with COVID is going to change substantially within the next, say 30 to 60 days is probably unlikely. So I think they made the right decision, the responsible decision. But it is very frustrating from my perspective, and I can only imagine what the kids and coaches must feel, but I think it was the right decision.
Michael Connell, bowling chair we're talking with. Also, he had your own battle with COVID-19 last month. For all those who haven't dealt with it, what was the most difficult part? What was it like? Honestly, the most difficult part, there were a couple of things with it. Watching the news and hearing all those horror stories and knowing that you have it and just sort of waiting for the other shoe to drop. Yeah.
So it was the sort of that part of it, geez, is that all going to happen to me? And so it was really scary at times. But, thankfully, I didn't have a very bad case at all. There were certainly a lot of other people that had it far, far worse than I did. So, I'm very grateful to all the people who checked in on me and, asked me how I was doing, how I was feeling. Shout out to all those people that did, specifically Marty Pirano at ESM. He checked in on me almost daily.
That's great.
But there were a lot of people out there who had it far worse, and I kind of felt guilty taking the thoughts and prayers because I felt that there were other people that needed it more than I did. But that was really the hardest part, was the isolation, not being able to be with your family and your friends, and then of course I had to stop watching the news. That was the challenging part.
I think everybody should stop watching the news. Have you seen more participation from bowling this winter, given the fact that, most other winter sports haven't gotten the go-ahead?
I can't say that I have. As a matter of fact, right now there's quite a few schools that are on pause because they've gone to the fully remote learning model. So we can't have interscholastic athletics unless there's in-person learning, or at least a hybrid model. So when schools are fully remote, there's no sports.
Yeah. So
at least for the next couple of weeks, I know there's a large quantity of schools that are just not going to have any sports at all. But the silver lining in this is there's no sectionals, there's no states here in Section 3, so we can extend our winter sports season, bowling, right through to the end of February, and I think even into the first week of March. So whereas the regular season would end, basically at the end of January.
Yeah, no, that's good. Definitely good. Well, Mike, obviously appreciate the insight. Thanks for coming on the program, and we're glad that you guys have something going on.
Yeah, happy to come on. Thanks for having me.
All right, Michael Connell, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be right back. This is ESPN Radio 97.7 and 100.1.